Well, I'm delighted today to have two colleagues with me from different parts of the world, one very close to me and one very far from me. And one I've known quite a long time and one I'm getting to know. And so we're going to talk about strategic planning today. And we realize that in having conversations with each other that there's very different circumstances that arise around strategic planning. And some clients, everyone has a different notion of what it is. And so we want to start from the premise of let's just explain a little bit about, who we are and our experience with strategic planning and what we're going to specifically talk about. But we're going to have a general description of a strategic planning and then take you into the technology participation model a little bit. And then I'll have Leah and Teck share a little bit about what some recent experience they've had with clients about strategic planning, just so everybody gets a sense of how the vast range of strategic planning and how it can just be this this stepping off point for so many people, for so many groups. So let's start with you, Leah. Who are you? Where are you? Who are you working with?
So I'm in British Columbia, Canada, and I'm a communications manager at a library consortium. So the consortium I work for really brings together post-secondary libraries in British Columbia. And so I've been doing facilitation for quite a number of years internally and with some external groups, but mostly in the library world. I said earlier, this is the water I swim in, is libraries, but branching out into some nonprofit agencies as well. And I'm new to technology of participation, but it's got me fired up. I really see the value of the techniques and the processes. And certainly I just finished the training for strategic planning in the summertime and can see so much applicability for libraries and really just about any organization, I think.
Wow, that's great. And so nice to have you in my new area of the world. And one day we'll meet in person.
For sure.
Have a cup of coffee or something.
I'd love that.
And Teck or TK for short. Tell us about who you are and what you've been up to with strategic planning.
Thanks, Bob. Well, I've been facilitating for about 16, 17 years. I didn't start off in this area. I was an engineer, but along the way, I decided working people is a little bit more exciting. So what do? I think I facilitate quite a bit with nonprofit, with public service, and the rest of the time I do training. Actually, I do more training than facilitation, but facilitation has always been a very exciting area, and I think there's a lot of impact we create when we facilitate conversations. So I'm always happy facilitating organizations when they want to do strategic planning, when they want a work plan. So I'm always happy to help out with that.
That's great. Yeah, and I would highly recommend both of you to people who need help with strategic planning or any aspect of facilitation or training for TK. So most of you know me, but I'll just say strategic planning has really been the bread and butter of my practice. And it's probably also beautifully the thing I love the most because it takes people through a journey and it takes groups from the past into the future, but taking all of those beautiful things into account. And you really do need every voice in the room to get a brilliant plan, and done well, it just sort of almost self-executes, and so it's a highly satisfying exercise. And surprisingly, it's been around a long time. It doesn't seem to need for it doesn't seem to change. And I personally use some of the strategic planning models that I've learned on my own business and on my own life. I use them constantly. So I'm very, very grateful for having learned this model originally from the Institute of Cultural Affairs with technology of participation. And then kind of learned some other models and always really come back to the top technology participation model just because it's so sound and it's got a very beautiful foundation. And we'll share that in a minute. But I thought it might be fun just to ask each other, what's a word that comes to mind when you think about strategic planning? As you've done strategic planning with clients or with yourself, what's an alternate phrase or word you would use, just so we can get our audience warmed up to the concept?
I can hop in. I'm a person who loves metaphors and analogies and imagery. And for me, I took a trip in the summertime to visit my brother and his wife on a tiny little island in northern Ontario, Canada. And they brought out their maps of the land and where they were taking these trips with their canoe. And the maps are fascinating. They're built by the community, so they're really volunteer-driven, created maps. And they show, the places where you can camp and the places where you want to portage it struck me that this process of planning a trip by water and using these maps is a lot like strategic planning. And so I kind of go to that metaphor of, the map is your environmental scan. You want to identify where's the current running in the direction that's going to move you forward. Where are the, rocky parts that might hold you back? You plan your destination, that's your practical visioning, where you think, okay, where do I want to end up when I get to my destination? What campsite am I heading for? And then you need to have a vessel, right? You need to either, choose a vessel or create a vessel that's going to navigate those waters, but also get everyone to the destination. You don't want to leave anyone on the shore. So that's way more than a word, Barb, but that's a metaphor that I've started to play with, to conceive of what strategic planning looks like and what we're trying to do. We're trying to get everyone in that vessel. And that vessel can look however the group needs it to look. Maybe that vessel has a jacuzzi on the top deck, who knows, right? Maybe it's solar powered, but whatever the group creates is going to get everyone to the destination.
Wow, that's great. And how about you, TK, Teck One?
Yeah, it's interesting. Leah painted that image. I also have a very similar image. So I know for the longest time, whenever I do strategic planning, I will draw on a flip chart like a mountain, like a series of like two mountains. And in between the mountain, there is always the sun. And then I will draw like a path getting there, and then like a group of people walking. Along the way, I'll draw a little bit like stones, boulders that block the way. Then there are trees, there are checkpoints. And then it is always like we are going towards a vision, a future, and that sunrise. Some people say it looks like sunset, but for me, well, it's for you to make a guess, right? So there is that distant future that you want to get to, but along the way, it's a journey. So I felt that strategic planning, it's a journey. There is a lot of collaboration. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to get to a place collectively together. As the African saying goes, right? If you want to go alone, you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you have to go together. Yeah, so I feel that strategic planning is all about slowing down a little bit, reflecting, and then getting towards going towards the same direction, but you want to go really far.
Nice. Yeah, I was in an airplane the other day, and thank you so much, both of you. As I was in the airplane, I looked down and we were flying into Panama. And I thought, oh my goodness, there's like so many ships. Wow, what is this about? Then I suddenly realized, oh, Panama Canal, they're probably waiting to get through the canal. And it sort of came to me that the strategic part of strategic planning is like waiting for the moment when you can go through the canal. It's knowing and doing enough thoughtfulness, data gathering, visioning, hard, honest look at what's getting in your way. And then the minute the canal opens, like all these boats would go through and there'd be no longer sort of a holdup. I think to be strategic and to have a good strategic plan, we need to wait for that moment for every sort of big decision we make, and just make sure the timing is right, make sure the resources are right, make sure that the people are right, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's no wrong time to do a strategic plan, but there's also a more optimal time to do a strategic plan. It's sort of like, is the canal ready to open? Let's do it. And so what would we say are the conditions under which an organization should do a strategic plan, or a team, or a community? What would you all say?
I think it
Well,
depends on how strong the vision the organization wants to have. If an organization doesn't have a lot of clarity, I think it's always good to plan, get a group of people together to sense make, and then decide where should we go from here. So I think strategic planning is for everybody.
Almost any time.
Yeah, anytime.
Okay. Leah?
yeah, I mean, so far from my experience, well, it's been a mix. Sometimes it's because an opportunity has arisen, right? So that's where I think that more optimal timing is sort of aligning with those circumstances, like either an opportunity or a challenge. I think coming out of COVID is a classic example. For most organizations, the pivot had to happen, but we've been dealing with the pandemic for 2 years now, and organizations have seemed to have sort of caught their breath and said, okay, what has been a challenge now might be a bit of an opportunity. So let's now that our feet are kind of on the ground, we have some sense of at least how to navigate this. How do we want to optimize our time? Are we, if we're working in a hybrid environment, if we're shifting to more online tools, this is an opportunity. And then I'd say the other half of groups that I've worked with, it's the time, their last strategic plan is up, so they're ready to do the next one, which is, it's fine, and it's always good. I agree with Teck One that you can take any opportunity really to do that scanning, to do that realigning, but it's a little bit more maybe reactive rather than proactive. So just different circumstances.
Yeah. And typically what I found is people will sort of realize they need a strategic plan when they're first forming.
Yes.
Or they've got a brand new slate of leadership people, or a whole new host of other new people coming in. Or, as you say, Leah, an opportunity, an infusion of resources, or a withdrawing of resources. And it's sort of like, oh, wow, we actually need to be strategic now, because we can't operate in the same way that we have. So we need to change things up enough, and we need to bring enough people along so that those changes are not resisted or blocked in any way. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Yeah, sorry,
I was
TK.
just thinking that there is
Mhm.
another situation where people normally ask for strategic planning
Mm.
when they feel that, oh, I need a vision and mission. I think maybe in Singapore, where I am, that's the most common request when they need that vision statement, that mission statement. Then they will ask me, like, can you do a strategic planning for me? It's like, sure, yeah, we will do that. And by the way, we'll help you get the vision and mission statement out. But then actually the key thing is we are getting you to have clarity of where you want to go, and then of course what strategy to help you get there.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, mission, vision, very common phrase. And I often find sometimes strategic planning is a beautiful opportunity to resolve some old conflicts, especially if you use the technology participation model. And I thought I would just have each of you say, give us a little headliner about what you're going to talk about, like a very specific strategic planning situation. And then after you do that, I'll show the diagram of the top model, and then I'll have each of you speak, and then we can kind of think about where it did meet the top model, where it didn't, what changes you made, because we're customizing and adapting, obviously, any frameworks we have. And that's the sign of a good facilitator, that we can adapt. It's a competency that we certify against. So, Leah, what's going to be your situation that you'll describe today?
Yeah, in
Briefly.
brief, it was a group that needed to have 2 separate sessions within one day. So one session with the staff of an organization in the morning, and the second session separately with we'll say the board of the organization. So I had to figure out how to transfer what was done in the morning to the afternoon, and help the board in the afternoon have a clear sense of what the staff needed so they could develop that strategic plan.
Great, wonderful. That sounds challenging and also a really unique circumstance. TK, how about you?
Actually, I had a very interesting project just recently, a strategic planning project that take 2+ months, almost 3 months. So the client was initially planning to do it face to face, but then due to pandemic getting more serious, a lot of contingencies, so everything went virtual. And we kind of split the sessions up into, I would say, 5 sessions. So I met the head of department, had a conversation. I asked them to form a retreat planning team. Then later on, I had the environment scan. Then I had a management conversation again to check in with them, how they find the outcomes of the first pre-retreat. Then we had a main retreat where the whole department came together. And then we had a post-retreat where we just do action planning. So it's like a series of like small little events, half day, some are full day, but it adds up to, for me, an entire strategic planning process.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll dig into the details a little bit in just a minute, but let me just screen share and have everybody look at this strategic planning model that we use in the technology of participation. And we can see that over on the left-hand side, we often, both of you mentioned like an environmental scan, and that can often happen before. And in this diagram here, sometimes you lay out vision and values, you do an environmental scan, or kind of a, by that we just mean an assessment of what's gone on in the environment to date. It might be a historical scan. And then the 4 core pieces of this practical vision, which are over here too, the practical long-range picture of the desired future. And it involves this kind of different kind of thinking, of visionary thinking. It's often very upbeat and people are excited and it's future-oriented. You're drawing consensus or drawing agreement amongst people. What's the most important thing that we want to see happening? And that can be changed into a vision statement, but not necessarily needed in this particular model. Some people like to have a vision statement on their website, but we find this practical vision as an outlining of a series of things that you want to see in place in 5 to 10 years. And depending on the community, it might be like 20 to 50 years. And then the second part, that main part, is called the underlying contradiction or the obstacles, and it's here preventing the realization of this vision, like sort of sitting down and like coming to this realistic, honest assessment. What's going to get in our way? It acknowledges the tensions. It asks a lot of whys. It's often where the conflict can start to bubble up and be resolved because now it's out in the air. And then after you've got these 2 pieces in place, you come up with strategic directions, and they start out with more strategic actions, and then they're clumped and moved together into overarching directions, and often only 3 or 4 of them. But this is where strategy comes in, and it's because it deals with simultaneously with what gets in the way and where you want to be in the future. So it works on these 2 earlier pieces. And so that's why the foundation is so strong between these 3 pieces. And then finally, you come up with your action plans, which typically people just do vision and action plans, and that they miss these 2 pieces. So to me, these 2 pieces are not a strategic plan. They're just, it's good to have a future vision, absolutely. And it's good to think of actions. But if you don't think of what's going to get in your way, and then actions to address the specifics of what's going to get in the way and where you want to be in the future, then you're not really being strategic.